Open your ears and lube up your butthole. It's time for the What Do We Call It podcast. Now, here's your host. It's Jmann. Welcome to the What Do We Call It podcast. I'm Jmann.
This is Steiny.
Yay! There was a lady that was on TikTok, and she was bragging about her husband and how she's so proud of him for having old-style morals. And here's the setup. Their daughter is like 13 or 14, and the first time that her new boyfriend comes to meet the dad, he meets the kid at the door and says, "You will call me sir. I have 4 guns. My daughter is a virgin, and if you do anything to interfere with that, you'll have to answer to me." I paraphrased part of it because I read it this morning, but
Okay.
It's almost verbatim what he said to this fucking kid. So I want you to think about being a 13 or 14-year-old boy,
Oh, yeah.
and a dad pulls the old super protective, I'm going to get you bullshit to
Yeah,
try
I
to
got
scare
guns.
this kid away from his goddamn daughter. That was basically when I was a kid, you would hear about dads talking like that to their daughter's boyfriends.
Yep.
I imagine you lived out in the sticks some,
Oh, yeah.
so there was a lot of dads like that that had hunting rifles and shit. And
Yep. And it was the joke. A lot of it was usually joking. It was almost like the obligatory, like, I've got a shotgun and, you know what, that type of thing. It wasn't as said as explicitly as your setup, right? But, yeah, it was a not uncommon thing to hear either in joke or semi-seriously.
I mean, my dad didn't ever talk or think like that, obviously, because he didn't have any daughters.
Mm.
And I never had any girl's dad come at me like that.
Mm-mm.
You heard about shit like that.
Yeah.
I never experienced it. But even, let's say 12, 13 years ago, I have a friend, he was going to have his first daughter. And he joked about that. He was like, when those boys come calling, I'll just be sitting on the porch shining my gun.
Yep.
And I'm like, well, 1, you're 6'6" and you're rail thin, so you're not threatening. And 2, why would you do that? Because once this lady put it on TikTok, she got lit the fuck up.
Oh, bitch.
I can see that not being as acceptable in today's society.
They said, how dare he basically speak for his daughter, and what are you teaching her in a world where we're trying to preach to girls bodily autonomy? You're basically saying, like, you own her like property, and yes, you're trying to defend the virtue of your daughter, which is kind of creepy on a few levels, honestly, to be that into it. But let her decide for herself, because the more you push, the more you're going to end up with a kid that wants to experiment because you're making it seem like it's so bad, and they're going to want to see what the fucking deal really is.
And has it ever really worked from time eternal, right? You know what I mean? Like, how many pregnancies have there been unplanned? You know what I mean? Kids find a way. So you're right. Yeah. What good are you really doing in this day and age to play that old school card?
I mean, it's one thing where I've said, like, anybody molests any of my kids, I'm going to beat them nearly to death.
Yeah, I've kind of... I think that kind of becomes from a protective rage, though. You know what I mean? Like, if anybody were to have touched my son, the cops would have to get there first, or you don't know what you do, right?
Oh, yeah, you'd be like, I could call the cops right now, but I'm not going to, because we're going to have some fun. You and I, we're going to go out to the backyard, and people are going to hear you scream, but I don't think they're going to come help you.
Yeah. You're going to have quite a few broken bones, and you might not be recognizable.
So now that we're in this day and age, and you've got kind of these throwback fathers, which I assume would mainly be in the South.
Oh, yeah, that would probably be, yeah.
This is not like a progressive
Well, just think about it. Any
North-type
place where
mindset.
guns are king, right?
Yeah.
Where the Second Amendment rules.
And now from the young man's perspective, what the fuck is that going to be like? He basically threatens you right out of the gate. So what you've done while trying to protect your daughter is basically alienate her by making this kid want to run for the hills. What are you going to do if you scare off boys and then your daughter ends up fucking hating you?
Well, isn't the first part of what that you just said what the dad wants? He wants to chase the boys off. Some dads have said they were never ready for their daughters to date, which is creepy as well if you go down that same pattern of protecting the virtue and all this kind of stuff. She's not your property, even though you fathered her.
Well, it's like years ago when T.I. got called out for taking his daughter to the doctor for a hymen test.
Oh, yeah, that was creepy as hell. Wasn't that part of that reality show, though, too, or whatever it was?
Some shit like that, and his daughter basically, quit the family. She was so fucking appalled by it, and then it was, on TV, and people were like, oh my God, your dad's a fucking freak. Yeah. So her whole life blew up. But as much as, you want to protect your daughter, wouldn't it make more sense to sit the boy down and be like, I'm not going to, threaten you. I don't want you to be scared of me. But I do want you to know that if you do anything to hurt her, you and I are going to have a problem. And I don't know what's going to happen, but you probably don't want to treat her with disrespect, like a notch on your belt, or lay your fucking hands on her. That's my advice to you. That way the kid would be like, oh, okay, right? But he's not going to go, your dad's fucking scary.
Right. Your dad's going to come after me with a gun?
Yeah, I have 4 guns. Why did you have to state the number of guns? You only have 2 hands. So let's just, for the sake of argument, say they're all handguns. Right. Well, you can only dual wield.
Right.
So
maybe he's just a terrible shot and he needs to fire that many rounds, so he's going to just switch between them.
But you wouldn't just carry extra mags on your belt and a holder?
Well, even just switching guns is faster than extra mags.
It's like an action movie where he's got 2 in holsters on his hips and 2 in his hands. And once they're empty, he fucking throws them and pulls the ones off his legs and goes, Yosemite Sam on this kid?
Exactly, just like the Matrix and stuff.
Jesus fucking Christ. So the kid then, let's say he goes home and tells his parents about this. You're opening up a whole nother fucking can of worms. Because that kid's parents are going to be like, who the fuck does this guy think he is threatening my kid?
Right, he's going to shoot my son?
My son?
I'm going to shoot him. This is how fucking Hatfield and McCoy shit starts. This is like dumb suburban Romeo and Juliet bullshit.
Or just dumb stuff you hear about on the First 48 or all those real crime shows, man. Just the things that lead up to a murder is just so dumb, right?
The father of the boy went to the house of the girl to confront her father. When he arrived, he was sitting there holding a gun. There was a short period of shouting that was captured by a neighbor's Ring doorbell, and then 4 shots were heard. Here's the video from that Ring doorbell, followed by the audio of the 911 call for the gunshot wounds.
While we show the blood still congealing on the ground.
Yeah. What would you do if some guy talked to your son like that? Because he's 16, going on 17 here in a few months. I have to believe he has some girls that he talks to and possibly...
Oh, he's got a girlfriend.
Okay.
For about 3-4 months now.
Anything like this go on? Where the dad's like, you motherfucker.
No, actually what it was is early on, I guess they'd been seeing each other for a little bit, but there was a day, on the weekend. My son wanted to bring her over to our house, right, to meet us. Well, the parents hadn't met us yet. She comes from a split family, so it was a weekend where she was at her dad's and stepmom's, and basically the stepmom kiboshed it saying, we don't know them yet, and you shouldn't go over there.
Can't go over there.
Right, and, you think about it, it's absolutely reasonable. And same type of thing, they're of an age to where my wife and I, we want to limit their alone time. We don't want to make it free access to be ridiculous. But I also told her, where there's a will, there's a way. And if there's 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there, you can find a place to make things happen, right? It doesn't matter if we leave them unattended for a half an hour or 15 minutes. Sometimes something can happen in a short amount of time.
Fucking 5 minutes.
Yeah. Where I grew up, there was a lot of lakes in that area. So there was always a boat landing or some side dirt road or a field that you could kind of pull off into. And that was all in the matter of just bringing her home and coming back, Mom and Dad,
Yeah.
Exactly. So
I can't imagine it's safe for her to go in his room and sit on his bedspread. There's no telling how much dried ejaculate is on every surface of his bedroom.
Especially when you try to get a teenage boy to regularly clean their sheets and stuff, or just things in general. It's like, dude, it's starting to smell.
Yeah, I met some parents, and I never had anybody fucking talk to me like that. They just were friendly and shit and asked me what I was into, and that was about it.
Well, and then it came down to it. A couple weeks later, there was an opportunity for her to come over, and the dad dropped her off. And so him and I got a chance to just face-to-face say hi, and we know that there's another parent over there that kind of has that same mindset of we're not going to leave them alone, and hopefully we can limit a teen pregnancy or becoming a grandparents early. But you are right. You know, there is that perspective about trying to control your kid's body. You know, what it is I've always approached it from a mindset of I'm going to give him information. I'm going to try to teach him as best I could. I'm going to try to warn him of the consequences of his actions as best I can. But I can't control him, right? I can't literally pull his hips away from her hips, you know, in any given moment of any day, right? I can't be there. So what's the next best thing? Is it for me to berate him, say it's a sin, all these other tactics that people try to do to get kids to not, like the threatening with the guns and all this other
belts.
stuff, you know, all these other things? Or do I inform him? Do I have him make a better decision? Do I tell him which method might be best to avoid pregnancy, right? Because everybody has their own. So that was my choice. I chose to be informative and hope for the best. And I think more people were raised that way, and I think a lot more parents did that. It's just we hear about teen pregnancy, or there's that fear, or if you don't believe in abortion, you can't help your daughter take care of it if that's her choice. I mean, there's so many ways that some people limit themselves, and it's ridiculous.
I just think it's dumb because you're just going to push your kid away.
That too.
You're not going to, if you're a helicopter parent that's just going to hover and try to stop them from making any mistakes, well, you can't fucking do that. And you can't watch them 24/7. Peekaboo! And at some point, they're going to go out and do stuff. They're going to come home late. They're going to experiment. It's part of growing up. Do you think he's doing stuff?
It's not that I want to be naive, but I also don't want to make any unnecessary assumptions. But me at 16, if I had an opportunity, and I would think something on one hand might have been some contact of some sort might have happened already, right?
Okay. Hand stuff. Maybe mouth stuff?
Yeah,
hopefully not crotch stuff.
Yeah, hopefully not. Like, you know, but it's not like I ever told him he had to wait to marriage, you know. It was always, you know, his mom was probably more the one to berate him and say all that kind of stuff, but I think both of us have instilled in the whole idea of, like, we don't want to be grandparents yet.
Yeah.
You know. And honestly, for him, it would really change his life. I know for me, even at my late 20s, when I became a father, it was life-changing. And I was ready for it to happen then. I couldn't imagine doing that in my teen years or early 20s or anything like that. So,
yeah, because he doesn't have like a degree and he can't get a good job and he doesn't really have any skills.
Yeah, not
except
yet.
for playing Call of Duty.
Not yet. Yeah, exactly. And those won't carry you far.
And they're not going to be like, oh, you can throw a baseball really hard? Cool. Here's $75,000.
Yeah.
That's probably not going to happen for him at this point.
Doesn't happen for a lot of us.
Now, conversely, and I joked about this for years, I was like, I hope both of my daughters are lesbians. Now, that's only when I had the two. I'm like, if they can grow up to only want to eat pussy, I will be so happy never having to think about them being out with a dirty boy trying to put his thing in their mouth and then having to cry myself to sleep.
Well, there you go. You're controlling your daughter's body.
I didn't tell them, please be lesbians.
Yeah, I hear you.
But it just so happened that the first one thinks she's lesbian. I'm like, that is so fucking awesome. Because she's the most awkward one. She is what they would call a practice girl. Yeah, people would be like, oh, I like you so much. And they'd be like, all right, I got some practice. I'm going to go try to fuck more attractive girls that are more popular.
Yeah, then they try to go up the scale.
Yeah. Whereas her sister, who's 10, and is basically like the exact same spot in terms of emotional maturity. That's the downside to having them be this close in age.
Yep.
And, yeah, she's popular. So it's like, uh-oh.
Get lots of attention then.
Because the beast is like, you need to get her in some sort of sport or else they're going to be on drugs and teenage moms. I'm like, I'm pretty sure that they don't just wake up one day with like a nose full of cocaine dust and a full uterus just because I didn't send them to go play soccer or basketball or softball or gymnastics or something. I want them to do that, but her fear is, well, you know, I lost my virginity behind the dumpster at a bowling alley when I was like 14, because that's what I thought you're supposed to do with your boyfriend is have sex. And I'm like, Jesus fucking Christ, could it have something to do with the fact that your dad was an old Muslim who didn't really talk to you much, and he still had those male-female roles hammered out in his head? Like, and really, a bowling alley? Jesus fucking Christ. I thought I was a slut because I banged a whore on the school smoking trail, also at 14.
A literal whore?
Well, not a prostitute,
That's what I
but
thought.
she was very loose. Not in terms of her vagina, but she had been fucked before by multiple people.
In a row?
So that was your practice girl.
Yeah. Yeah, and then I was done. I was like, that's it? That wasn't special. That was stupid.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't like that it was her.
Oh, that's why. Okay. Yeah.
I mean, long story short, I had dated a girl freshman into sophomore year, and we tried to have sex. Here's the problem. I didn't know you're supposed to get a pussy wet before you try to stick it in.
Yeah.
And she was like 90 pounds and 5'2". I'm not saying I have a massive cock, but that thing, maybe if I would have spit on it, it would have gone in there. But I always liken it to like trying to put a quarter inside the mouth hole on a pop can. Not a wide mouth can.
Yeah.
A regular pop can. Because it's just like, not ready to take it. And then, of course, when my parents found out that I had tried to have sex, my mom did the most Linda thing she could do, and that's call her parents to inform them and throw a shit fit. And then that girl's mom asked her while she was in the room, did you and Jay try to have sex? And she's like, no. So then that girl's mom thought my mom was insane.
Oh, well.
Which is really not too far off.
Right.
Because holy fucking shit, you made me sit at the kitchen table and explain it to you. I had to tell my parents why we didn't have sex.
God damn it.
Gross.
Like, we tried to have sex, but we couldn't. Well, what do you mean? I'm like, I couldn't. I had to, like, that's where I get the quarter analogy from.
That was the best
I'm
thing
trying to put a
you
quarter
had.
into the mouth hole of a Coke can. I'm like, it wouldn't go. Okay, I couldn't get it in. So, and maybe my dad was like, oh, that's awesome. You know, big dick son. Woo.
Woo!
Yeah.
But, fuck, man. As much as you want to protect them, you damn sure can't be threatening the boyfriend, because that's a bonehead move that can get you in all kinds of legal trouble. Imagine if that kid went home and told his parents, and those parents called the authorities, and a cop came is like, why the fuck did you feel it necessary to mention the point of owning 4 guns?
Right.
And then he has to answer to you if she loses her virginity. Like, what the fuck is your deal here? Because now he thinks that you're going to hurt him, and if he were to turn up dead, guess whose fucking doorstep we're going to show up to first, you dipshit? Like, just setting yourself up for all kinds of calamity. You think you're doing the good dad thing, but you're fucking up on a myriad of levels that just make you look old worldly, asinine, possessive, small-minded.
But isn't that the exact point of what the wife was trying to prove or point out?
Yeah, and that just makes her look like an even bigger fucking dingbat for being like, my husband, he's an old soul. He's got classic values. Yeah, I'm glad that you've been enjoying 25 years of nothing but missionary and Sunday morning service, but your kids might not want the same shit that you've been doing. Interact with the show on Twitter at What Do We Call It? That is at What Do We Call It? You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/group/What Do We Call It podcast show. For the What Do We Call It podcast, I'm Jmann.
This is Steiny.
And that's the end.